just putting it out onto Facebook next here. So. Yeah. All right. Live stream, got it. Webinar streaming. All righty. So I haven't done this in a couple of weeks, and so sometimes it's kind of funny, but I gotta actually remember, even during the time of shutdown and everything. We were doing these twice a week, and so it was just like,
yeah, second nature.
Yeah, now that we're back and traveling and doing things, hosting live things and everything, it's like we're trying to fit these in as best as we can, but sometimes I take a little time off from it. So, oh, we got Steve and Martha Hewitt zooming in from Columbus. Thanks for joining us again, Steve and Martha. It sounds like it's a nice enough day over there, cold and rain, but still 78. Mm-hmm. That's better than snow and sleet and everything else that you've shared with us. Oh, you opened a Benom Origin, 100% Cab Sauv. That is a delicious wine for a Thursday afternoon. And and you're headed coming back to the Central Coast this Easter. Nice, very cool. Well, thank you again for joining us. And I see a few other people, the Ever Wines, Mike Wilkie back on, Paul Maynard. Thank you for joining us again. We'll get into the subject here in just a second. Just letting the Facebook side of things catch up to us. And actually, I'll be right back, everyone.
Yeah, we're so happy to see that some of you are just dialing in every week or every month, rather, for these episodes. We hope you're visiting us as often as you dial in.
Cool. Awesome. Sorry, I had to pop out in the main office there for a quick second. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Paso Wine Hour. Really appreciate you zooming in with us today. We've been off for a little while. We've had so much going on these days. We just got done with our spring release weekend event. So you may have seen these logos all around, or if you can see that at all around our website and out there in Facebook land and everything. So we had that event a couple of weeks ago, and we've been hosting groups and doing all kinds of things again here live. So we're happy to be back and doing one of the Paso Wine Hours. And today we have the CAB Collective as our collective guest, actually, and guests. Great organization in town that helps to promote the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Bordeaux varieties. It's actually, CAB is actually an acronym. We'll get into that in a second. But first off, let's do a quick round robin as to who is joining us today. Let's start with Stacey. Stacey, welcome.
Hello. So a little intro, I'm Stacey Seay from Hope Family Wines. I'm the director of Vineyards here. I've been here about 5 years total. I've been in the industry for, I hate to say it, 28 years. I'm from Paso Robles. I actually grew up here. I grew up in a vineyard, was out kind of with my dad and farming as I grew up. And then quickly he threw me out into the vineyard as soon as I was old enough to not cry about it, basically. But it really developed my love of agriculture and my love of viticulture. And from there, then I worked with him for a while. And then I spent quite a lot of time during my career with a really large company, working not only up and down the Central Coast as grower relations and vineyard management, but throughout the state. So, through that process, I knew my main goal was to get back to Paso Robles. And the minute I had an opportunity to work with Austin Hope and the Hope Family Wines, I jumped. So I'm super happy to be back in Paso. I still drive as much as I did before, but it's mostly in Paso from vineyard to vineyard. And you never have a bad day in a vineyard, let me tell you. It's great.
Nice, awesome. We have also Linda Parker Sanpei from CAB Collective, but also Parker Sanpei Communications. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us today. I've had the privilege of being the executive director of the Pastorables CAB Collective since its inception, and we can go into detail a little bit about that, but that's been since 2013, and what we've seen has just been tremendous for Paso Robles. But rolling back, my passion for the wine industry really dates back to when I first moved here to go to college. And in the late 80s, I was doing nothing but promoting Paso Robles and the Edna Valley, the Central Coast wineries, which led me to a career in the wine industry eventually. But I was doing that in school, working in restaurants, and just knew that this was just the next up and coming region. From having lived in a wine and food family, I just had it in my blood, and here I am today. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. And then Doug joining us again, this time from actually in Paso. As I recall, when we did the Farm Bureau show, you were in New York.
Actually, I was in NOLA, New Orleans.
Oh, New
Louisiana.
Orleans. Okay.
Yeah, but you can be just about anywhere. And that's the only thing I can say about this last 2 years that's been somewhat fun is that these Zoom things actually work. We can be anywhere. We can all get together, and particularly if we're all have a glass of wine in front of us, we can enjoy ourselves. So my name is Doug Filipponi. I'm, I guess what you would call a native here. I was born in Paso Robles and been involved in the wine and grape business since the early 90s, probably late 80s actually. And really today, these days, and since about 2020, yeah, 2020, no, 2000. Oh, yes. Been involved in the Santa Margarita Ranch, which has the Margarita Vineyards planted in the center of it. And then Ancient Peaks wines are made from those grapes. So I'm here today to join with you and my cohorts here to tell you a little bit about the Pastorables CAB Collective. I'm currently the president of the CAB Collective and have been for a few years. So I'm really proud to be here to join Christopher. And I have to say, I formerly served on the board of the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance as well years ago. And so pretty much entrenched in getting the word for Paso out for many years. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doug. So before we get into the subject, where are we in the vineyard? So bud break has definitely happened. I think that probably happened about 2 weeks ago. Some places are just starting to kind of see any form of bud break, but then again, though, I think in earnest, it's been about 2 weeks since you could legitimately say Paso as a region has entered into the next vintage. Stacey, what are you seeing out there right now?
Definitely bud break. We've had some unseasonably warm weather, and it's kind of pushed some bud break along, but it's kind of running normal, I would say. Primarily, I'm seeing a lot of Rhones pop, white varieties start to break bud, and Cabernet is swelling. I haven't seen a lot of bud break in Cabernet, but I would expect in the next 10 days or so, we will. Our forecast for next week is, sorry for the 37 guys if you're out there, but we're looking at upward of 90 degrees by midweek next week. So it's a little on the warm side. We did have some rain. We had a decent amount, a little over an inch, almost all over the AVA. But that pretty much has served to, I mean, it helps absolutely with our rain averages and everything, but it seems like it really kind of spurred on our cover crops, which is super. And it's keeping the frost away, which is even better. So
yeah, so and an inch and a half or so. I don't know, Doug, what did you get down there in southern part of the AVA?
Yeah, in Santa Margarita at the ranch, inch and a half to an inch 90. So we typically will see anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times what the downtown Paso or east of Paso will get. And we're a little bit cooler down at the southern end of the valley there. And so our bud break is a little later, but I do have a photo we took a couple of hours ago. I don't know if you guys can all see that.
That's great.
There's some little Chardonnay. Yeah, little baby Chardonnay leaves popping out. So we are there. Nothing, of course, the cab is still hanging tight, and I hope it stays down for another at least week or 10 days because it can get awfully cold with these dry winters. So hopefully we don't have the coldest frost season, but you have to be prepared for anything in Paso Robles.
Well, and it get pretty warm next weekend or next week. By next week, that's I don't know if that's going to be a sign of what this year is going to be like, if it's going to be a really warm summer or not, but we've already had a good stretch of 80-degree weather here, what, a week or so ago, into some rain. So, I mean, fingers crossed that we actually get a little bit more rain before, you know, some of those April showers that bring May flowers or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'd say typically though, growers and farmers are slightly pessimistic when it comes to the weather, especially in the springtime, because it's so crazy here. You never know what you're going to get. So it might kind of start, you know, everybody's running down to Lowe's and buying their vegetables right now and planting like heck, but I won't ever plant a garden until like late May, because I don't feel like it's safe. So we could have another 2 months ahead of us of some frost conditions for sure.
Yeah, I think for us, what we typically, you know, traditionally would think is that if we can make frost through Winefest, which is always the third weekend of May, then we're good.
Right.
It's almost like Winefest is secretly the celebration of no more frost.
Has that proven to be true?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Good
I would
stat.
say Stacey and her dad and I could tell you some stories about a frost in June sometimes, but
Yeah.
for the most part, May, you know, third week of May, we're letting down a little bit, but it can always jump you at the wrong time.
Right.
But you don't get totally comfortable until about the middle of June.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about CAB Collective, and we're going to talk a little bit about Cabernet Sauvignon as well in the area. But CAB Collective, it's an organization that was founded 12 years ago, or no, 2012, right?
2012, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. And all about promoting Cabernet Sauvignon and the Bordeaux varieties. Linda, please take it away. Tell us more about CAB Collective.
Yes, CAB Collective was really the brainchild of Daniel Dow. He searched the world with his passion for Cabernet to find the most magical place to plant Cabernet, and he found it right here in Paso Robles. And they established their winery back in 2007 with a dedication to Cabernet Sauvignon, and in 2012. It came to him that really what we needed to do from a Cabernet perspective, we had over 60% of all wine grapes are Cabernet or Red Bordeaux varietals here. We had certainly done a great job in promoting the beautiful Rhone varietals that we also do in this region. But Cabernet, with its extensive plantings and production, had really been under-recognized. And so his mission or his vision was to bring together the top producers of Cabernet in the region who were willing to step forward and promote this region as a Cabernet region and form the CAB Collective. He approached the folks at Justin, Everly, the small producers such as Chateau Margine and Adelaida, J-Lore, and Vina Robles are really founding members of the CAB Collective who formed the organization in 2012. And in 2013, we actually began to activate on some of the strategies that we had laid forth. I think it was December 23rd or 24th that I had my interview with the CAB Collective board, and it was to start January 1st. Initially, the thought was, frankly, was the RFP was to do a few consumer events, and our strategy as it evolved was really to gain the loyalty and following of trade and media, with the belief that if trade and media had embraced our brands and they have them on their wine lists, they have them on their shelves, and they're speaking about it passionately, that the consumers would follow, and the consumers would come to the region with the intent of seeking Cabernet Sauvignon and tasting it, buying it, and following it in their local restaurants. The first 5 years were dedicated to really Southern California. In my experience, you can sell 20% of your production in Southern California. It's a really, really big market for us, and was a flyover market for Cabernet producers or Cabernet lovers who went to Napa, Sonoma, and other regions to just know that they could just simply drive up 4 hours to Paso Robles and experience exceptional quality, exceptional value, and have a new discovery that maybe is not their parents' discovery, but their own.
Yeah. And when you started, a quick question to that. you answered this RFP and everything, but were you already kind of involved and already talking about CAB Collective with them? Because so many of I mean, you've been entrenched in our wine industry for quite some time in your PR life and everything, you know, you have clients and everything. Were you already kind of aware of what was happening with CAB Collective at any point in time, or?
Not when I answered the RFP,
Oh, okay.
but certainly I knew that the region was very well. I felt that my palate told me that the region was very well conducive to Cabernet. I tasted some exceptional Rhones, trust me there. But I knew that Cabernet was also like the future of the region by virtue of its plantings and its production, and just everything that that was presented to me by the board of the CAB Collective just resonated for me. I had come from a background of building brands. I launched a brand that was half Cabernet and half Syrah. So it was Seven Peaks Winery back in the late 90s, and a lot of the juice was actually from Paso Robles. And so I knew the potential, but I also understood, unlike maybe an average marketing agency, I also understood what it took to gain the trust of trade, how to speak to them, how to speak to media from a media perspective, and just how to coalesce people together to create a mission and a vision, a singular voice, and just push the objective forward, if you will.
Yeah, you mentioned about the CAB was coming from Paso. You know, when I started here at the Alliance in 2007, there was this statistic that was kind of thrown around at the time. I don't know how accurate it really was at the time, but anyway, it basically said that 50% of what was grown in Paso was actually leaving Paso. Back then, a lot of it was Cabernet Sauvignon. I mean, Stacey and Doug, you guys have been around a while. I mean, do you recall that from basically like in the early to mid or later mid 2000s, like 2007-ish or 6 and 7?
Yeah, I'd say, Stacey, wouldn't you say that number's kind of light? I think more than way more than 50% went out of Paso Robles. That was the issue for us as growers in those days, and then the wineries using some of the Paso grapes that were grown here, but most of them, far greater than 50%, were leaving town. I'd say today that number is definitely much lower. There's still a fair amount of Paso Cabernet going out of town, but with the Paso producers are now taking advantage, thanks to the marketing that took place through PRCC, the PRWCA, et cetera. You know, what we've been doing for 25, 30 years, it started with the lowly little Paso grape growers group back in, in the early 90s, maybe late 80s. Anyway, bottom line is people are finally realizing that Paso Robles is not, in West Texas. It's in the central coast of California, 15 miles from the ocean and halfway between LA and San Francisco. And we're becoming the force that we always have been in terms of growing, but now making these beautiful wines that showcase this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, I resonate with that because, when I first started in sales and marketing and traveled around the country talking about Paso Robles, I was always asked where in Texas that was. And and it is so great that, the word Paso Robles is synergistic to who and what we are on the Central Coast now. And I think it's irrefutable. The vision for the CAB Collective was really, Daniel's vision, and those who came on as our founding members, including Justin Eberle, Chateau Margine, Adelaida, J. Lore, and Vina Robles, was to position this region for Cabernet on a global stage. Not to say that we're Bordeaux, Napa, or any other region in the world, but that we too justifiably should be on that playing field. It's taken us a decade and a lot of endorsements through media and trade, but I can unequivocally say that we are now there. We are being recognized around the world for a leading producer of Cabernet, and also an enviable position for travel trade and just consumers to come to the region and enjoy everything that we have to offer here. And it we're not singularly responsible for this by any stretch of the imagination. Chris, you and your team at the PRWCA as our partners have done tremendous jobs. Our partners, Tasting Panel Magazine, Sound Journal, and all those wine critics who have written about the region have certainly attributed to the growth, but also the quality of marketing and spokesmanship from all of our vintners in the region has just been remarkable. I think the energy here is palpable. You can't deny it. People come here and they feel it, and we're just part of that. We're just a cog on the wheel. We're excited to be there.
Yeah. You know, when we think back on the history of Cabernet Sauvignon a little bit more, I mean, I'm curious about how it was maybe some years ago to where we are today. You know, there's been a lot of advancements in clones or in, you know, maybe even trellising and all kinds of other things. Stacey, I want to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the farming of cab and maybe how it was, you know, let's look at 10 years or 20 years ago, and then where we might be today? Has there been something that has shifted? Because we're going to come back around and talk a little bit about the category growth, but I want to start in the vineyard first. Has something been done farming wise over time that has helped Paso Cab resonate a little bit more?
I mean, absolutely. I think viticulture is an evolution for sure. And as we gain more tools in our toolbox, technology, information, that sort of thing, it really helps to kind of advance our thought process on how we're handling our vineyard. The biggest issue, I think, with vineyards is that it's a long-term goal or a process. It's a 25-year commitment. And so it's not easy to change on the fly if, you know, something, the latest and greatest has come out, because it's either not affordable, you already have your vineyard set up and you kind of have a certain system, but there are things you can do, right? So I think certainly one of the biggest things is people really becoming aware of and practicing sustainable practices. The main one in my mind is watering, for sure, is our irrigation. Our thought processes have changed as far as how we irrigate, when we irrigate, you know, why we're irrigating, and kind of marrying those up with vine balance. I think people are very attuned now to vine balance. To me, vine balance means wine quality. How you get there is, you know, some canopy management, but definitely your irrigation management helps with your canopy management and so forth. But there's so many tools that we have now, monitoring systems, you know, phenology models as far as diseases and pests. There's a lot available to us. As far as clones go, I would say this. My experience here at Hope Family Wines kind of set that, kind of resonated and set it in stone for me. We do have a lot of availability recently of new clones coming into Paso Robles. Traditionally, it was one clone. We all just planted the same as what we had, and that's what we did. We now have some opportunities because we have these vineyards that were, you know, all put in the mid 90s to early 2000s that are coming to that kind of end stage where they're starting to become diseased or lower production, and we're needing to redevelop. And so now we're just starting to see all these new clones. We figured out what rootstocks truly work in Paso Robles, because we had kind of this 25-year experiment of what rootstocks work and what don't. And here we are. So, you know, I've been able to do a lot of replanting, development contracts and planting contracts. And now I'm being very specific using one of my new tools, which are clones and rootstocks. But we also know that row orientation has something to do with quality. We know that soils have everything to do with quality. I think Doug has one of the best properties from a soils position that's unique in the Paso Robles region. How I look to source Cabernet for our brands is site, soil, and grower. And so to me, you know, maybe when we were selling everything out of the area, we weren't seeing a grower relations person or a winemaker even ever, and we never got feedback. We would just sell our grapes and, you know, hope the check cleared later. But now it's quite different because people are tuned in. they're sending people in to really make those pre-evaluations as we grow and begin to harvest, and then post-evaluations, and giving that feedback back to the grower so they can work to improve things.
Wow, that's cool. And it's great that you mentioned, though, that you work with growers, and that Doug and the Santa Margarita Ranch, of course, is one of your partners as well. Doug, over time, and as your brand has grown, how have you seen CAB itself, especially maybe even during the time of CAB Collective, because you've been on for a while now? How have you seen CAB as that finished bottle of wine, its growth in sales? I mean, are we seeing more and more people really, wanting to get Cabernet Sauvignon from Paso?
Yes, we have. And kind of dovetailing on to what was just said, Stacey, we've both been through the big flush of the plantings in the 90s, and then now those vines are starting to get some age on them. There was a disease that came out called red blotch, and it shortened the life. You thought you had a 25 to 35-year-old vineyard, but now we're finding some of these vineyards are lucky to make 20 years. So we've found that increasing the number of vines per acre, reducing the amount of water that you give to those vines, and reducing the crop load so that you're growing for quality, not quantity. And this all goes back to price point. Back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when all this fruit was going out of town, it was like, just get me all the tons that you can get me. When the French Paradox came out in 1991, there was every person that walked into a wine shop said, just give me a bottle of Cabernet. I don't care where it came from, just because it was going to be heart healthy, right? So this sucked up a lot of product and a lot of Cabernet. And so the wineries were just trying to meet the needs. But now with the CAB Collective and the Wine Country Alliance specifically promoting Paso Robles as a quality destination for finding great wines for affordable prices, I might say, for the quality, over delivering for the price. This has been our mission now for the last 15 of the years that I've been in growing, is to grow better grapes and make better wine. Because you can start with mediocre fruit and make a decent glass of wine that's drinkable, but to make great wines, you got to start out with great fruit, and you can't do that by overwatering and not paying any attention to the canopy, being out of balance, being have the wrong fruit in the wrong place. There's so much to it that makes it turn out to be a glass of wine that you can be proud of.
Yeah. I love to hear the fact that, when you go out into market, people are more and more, resonating a little bit with Cabernet Sauvignon from Paso. It's nice to hear that. I feel like that when I first started in my position here, we did have a hard time even just getting Paso like in the door places on cab, Rones, or anything like in between. But these days, having Paso be able to compete on the most competitive of categories, being Cabernet Sauvignon, is pretty cool, because you can get it from so many different places and so many styles and variations of such. But one thing that is important, and I wanted to touch on, back to you, Linda, is the category growth, though. I mean, you have some Nielsen numbers or something like that?
Yeah, we do. We have some Nielsen numbers that just show 51% growth year over year, 21 over 20. And that surpasses all other regions by at least 20%. And Cabernet from that category showed a 78% share of that growth. Red blends from Paso Robles at 10%. So we're looking at 88% dedicated to either Cabernet or red blends. It doesn't break down what those red blends are, but we can speculate. Overall, we're looking at a 30% growth in red blends and a 23% growth in Cabernet from this region, which is just phenomenal. We know that in many respects, COVID and other elements have helped the region gain popularity. I I could pontificate all day long about some of our vintners and what they did during COVID to really aggressively stay in front of the consumer, shift from the on-premise to the retail or to the delivery DTC model. They have done just a tremendous job, relentless, to stay in front of the consumer and preach the word of Paso Robles and Pastorables CAB. And at the end of the day, the buyers are going into these retail stores. This does not account for the restaurant sales or DTC sales. This is strictly retail sales in major markets and major retails. And the numbers prove that, in fact, the efforts of these vintners and others have really accelerated the vision of what was set forth 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I heard also some little things about how Paso, as a region and playing in that category, but also playing in that kind of $20 to $30 Cabernet category, that we are now actually fully competitive within that, because with Dow and what they're putting out, or Austin Hope and a few others that are now in there in many national markets and even to some extent international markets, it's really done a lot to help elevate Paso as an AVA.
Absolutely. And if I didn't mention it, those statistics were the $20 and above category in retail, which, as we know, is sometimes a tough push at Albertsons, right?
Yeah.
But people are seeking our brands.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the below $11 is actually going down, and above 20 is the highest growth. And I think it's showing that people are willing to pay a little extra money for the quality when you over deliver it in a glass of wine, like we do from Paso Robles. The money is well spent, and people are reacting to it, and that's where the growth is.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. I know that a few years ago with the Austin Hope Cabernet Sauvignon, it also had the great pleasure of receiving a really good score from a very reputable publication, and then all of a sudden, that thing sold out like that, right, Stacey?
Right.
Like that. And it's been like that ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't hurt to be named number 10 and then number 7 in the world in 19 and 20.
Yeah, and that's Cabernet from Paso, you guys. I mean, I know that Napa is Cab, and I know that, Bordeaux, I mean, there's a lot of Cab out there, but that's really solid for Paso to have these types of accolades, and they just continue too. It seems like it's always something of that sort, but especially Cabernet Sauvignon recently. I just dig that so much.
Yeah.
Jumping over into what it is that CAB Collective does. I had the great pleasure, and thank you very much, Linda, and everybody at CAB Collective, to ask me once again to come and present to your campers. They do a thing called CAB Camp. It's pretty cool. It's like 40 top buyers from all over the US come to Paso for a few days of this pretty intense immersion. You guys are crazy how busy you keep everybody, by the way. It's amazing, and the coordination that you're doing there, I need to take some notes. But I get to come and present the AVA, and so thank you for doing that. Everybody seems so engaged. Talk a little bit about CAB Camp and why you do CAB Camp.
Absolutely. We started CAB Camp about 7 years ago with 10 buyers, Southern California focus, as I mentioned. That was our initial focus. And we brought them to the region for 3 days of immersion to meet the vintners, kick the dirt, taste from the barrels, just really get their hands dirty and understand who we are, and not only from a production perspective, but also a personality perspective. And what we found is they went back, and I would get emails from top buyers, both on and off premise in Southern California, that said, we just added 7 SKUs, we just added 3 SKUs, and this is what we're doing. We're going to have winemaker dinners based on Paso CAB. And it was working, and they were adding Paso Robles to their list. They're having shelf dedication to Paso Robles and to Paso CABs. It surprised us even, actually, the length of which it worked. And it also increased our DTC in Southern California. We could visibly see that by virtue of the media, influencers, and ambassadors just really endorsing Paso and Paso Robles CAB. So we then grew that to 20 buyers and took it on a national basis. And we thought, well, can we do 20? Might as well do 40. Another bus is the same amount of effort. And so now we also partner with the Somm Foundation, who helps us vet buyers from around the country. And we collaborate with all of our partner members also to personally invite some of their top buyers around the country. So this year, with our focus on Texas, we had 8 Texas buyers, and the other 32 were from around the country, everywhere from Massachusetts to Portland, Oregon, to places in between. And they actually came early and they stay late, but this year it was ostensibly scheduled for Sunday through Tuesday. So we started at Gary Eberle's. We then went to the Allegretto for a check-in wine interview, went to J-Lore. We finished off at an amazing dinner at Opolo. Next day, 7 a.m., wheels up.
Wow.
We're heading off to Doug Filipponi's Oyster Ridge barn, where we had breakfast, and you were gracious enough to join us, as was Travel Paso, to give an overview of the region. We looked at those seashells, those maritime influences on your vineyards, and we had a panel discussion. We actually had 3 panel discussions that involved 5 to 6 vintners from the membership throughout the days. The next day was wheels up to 4 different vineyards. We then went to Justin for another panel discussion, and then a grand tasting at Ribbley Family, and finished off with an event at Dow. So we kept them busy from 7 a.m. to about 10 p.m. And believe it or not, they were wondering why the bar didn't stay open.
That's amazing. Well, trade loves these types of tours. We're actually doing a tour at the end of the show. I'll let you guys know that if you're in a few select markets, we're doing an all expense paid trip to Paso as well for trade. But I'll get there at the end. But yeah, these trade trips though, they go. They want to eat up as much information as they can.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, they might be sleepy eyed there at 7 a.m., but they're in the bus.
They are in the bus, and I must say, we had, one of the most engaged groups ever. I think the quality just keeps getting better because the competition to come to Paso on either your trips or ours is just increasing with the recognition we're gaining for the region. And yeah, we don't let them go to sleep very long, but they leave. I think they leave as ambassadors. We're seeing progress on the list, whether it be the Outer Banks of North Carolina telling me that they're doing a monthly Paso immersion tasting, or wherever it might be. It really validates the efforts that we're collectively doing to really build Paso.
Yeah, that's great. Doug, I saw how you were involved, at least as a host. Stacey, I missed. What were you doing as part of the itinerary? What were you guys part of?
So we actually hosted them and then invited industry to come as well. But we had, after they spent the day with Doug, they actually headed over and saw us for kind of a pre-dinner tasting. And then we had a walk-around dinner, different stations with different foods, and our wines paired at each station with those foods. So everybody got a chance to really kind of get around the tasting room area, sit, chat, enjoy, kind of, it was just less formal, but we all got to interact quite nicely. It was actually a really fun evening. And let me tell you, these people come with questions.
Yeah.
They're just not on a vacation trip. They're actually here to learn. And they want feedback, and they want to get back to you because they're going to remember some other question that they couldn't think of at the time or whatever. And they want your info because they're definitely going to contact you again.
Stacey, you did an amazing job presenting, and your geekiness on your rocks and soils and everything. They so love that. And Hope Family did such an amazing job there. Those stations were so well embraced. So thank you to you and the team for doing a rocking job. We also had that night what we called library wines. And so each of the evenings has a theme, whether it be large bottles, library wines, or new releases. And we had library wines at Hope Family Wines, and they enjoyed that as well. We actually had to pry them off of the bar to get them into the bus to take them home. We said, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Yeah.
Speaking of bar, what I've seen you guys sipping on something. You're all sipping on, I'm going to assume, a cab of some sort. Doug, what do you got in your glass?
Yes, thank you for asking, Christopher. I found a 2017 bottle of Oyster Ridge, which is 80% cab, and the balance in Petit Verdot, Malbec, Merlot, and Cab Franc. So I thought this would be an appropriate wine. It's a 94-point scoring wine that we were very fortunate to have a great year in 2017. And of course, our winemakers are, their work is exemplary and beautiful French oak. So I'm enjoying that right now.
So what vintage are you currently on though for Oyster Ridge?
Okay, so the Oyster Ridge that's currently in the market is the 18. And I understand that we will be releasing a 19 around June or so.
Okay, awesome. And so Oyster Ridge is kind of your bigger kind of Bordeaux style big blend. I'm pretty familiar with that wine. It's just a delicious wine. So
thank you. We started out by just taking whatever the best of what we did at Margarita. So it would be Cab, Syrah, Zinfandel. I mean, it could be any kind of a blend back in the original. And then when I was elected to the board of the PRCC and we were presenting Cabernets, I asked my winemakers, I said, I'm not telling you have to make Oyster Ridge a Bordeaux blend, but I'm just suggesting that if it is the best of what we've got, it would be great that I could show up with a bottle of Oyster Ridge like this. It's all Bordeaux. So miraculously, they came up with the very next year was all Bordeaux. So I was very proud of my guys. They did a great job.
So why do we call it Oyster Ridge?
Well, we sit over a 14 million year old formation called the Santa Margarita Formation. It's actually named, and there Christopher has
look at you.
one of our baby oysters there. I don't know if you guys all could see that. I'll stop talking. Christopher, if you say something when you hold it up, maybe they'll all see it. I don't know that they see us all.
I think so.
You might have to do that again, Chris.
Okay.
It's a little part of the soil of Santa Margarita Ranch.
Yes. So that 14 million year old formation that's 93% calcium. And certainly the ridge where the barn is where we enjoyed ourselves the other day. There's a ridge of those shells that
it's a hat.
It's bigger than my head. So
yes. But it's just one of the many different soil types that we have. And one day we should do, Christopher, a good one would be vineyards on different soil types, same clones on different soils and taste profiles, because I think that's an interesting subject.
Let's do that for the upcoming Paso Wine School. I like that idea.
Yeah,
Write that down.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Stacey, what are you sipping on?
Well, shocker. I'll say no, 2019 Cabernet.
Yeah.
But it's actually, Doug, it was a good segue because our state vineyard is in the Templeton Gap, and it's all Rhone varietals. Originally Cabernet in the mid 90s, but it's a little too cool there for Cab and Merlot to grow. And so we moved that over to Rhones, which thrive well. But this particular Cab, and also our Triana Cab and Liberty School Cab, is all Paso based. We don't leave the region, but we partner up with about 50 different growers all over the AVA. We're not AVA specific or sub-district specific at all. Our 2020 Cabernet is actually sourced from 9 out of our 11 sub-AVAs. As I said, we follow the soils, and we do have our favorite AVAs, that's for sure, different soil types, that sort of thing. But what we find is there is great Cabernet in every single sub-AVA within the Paso district. And so it's important for us to showcase that. And the more we look around, the more we find. And, like I said, when I was doing my intro, is that, Austin's a big believer in soils. JC, our winemakers, big believer in soils driving quality. It's something I learned over the years too. No matter where you are, these soils definitely drive quality. And to me, it's quite amazing that we can produce a Paso Robles Cabernet that's getting the accolades, the scores, and the recognition that it is. That's not an estate wine. It's sourced from everywhere. It really is, Austin kind of coined this term, Paso Robles defined. I mean, this is a true definition of Paso Robles Cabernet in a bottle.
That's awesome. And it's definitely a very well received wine out there by critics every year. And so, yeah, delicious wine as well. What do you have in your glass?
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Like I have 24
I'll tell you what
children. But I have 24 beautiful children. It just kind of depends how they're behaving with my meal.
Maybe you had to make a blend.
What a PR question. What a PR response. I can respect that.
I guarantee it's Cabernet.
It is Cabernet. It is Cabernet. But you know what I want to add, and it's not to take away from anything we were doing 10 years ago, but the collective has pushed the envelope, actually. The position was placed of, if we just made one barrel of the very, very best that we could do, and we put 3 figures on the price tag, can we do that? Can we actually rival other regions that are doing that? And that was Daniel's position, and it was taken as a challenge by some of our vintners to say, wow, you're right. We've had this ubiquitous wine at this price range. Can we elevate that standard? And can we, because we know that there's a certain demographic that is looking for that price point and that value definition, right? And that quality definition. And I have actually witnessed over the last 10 years of tasting these member wines and also watching our vintners actually elevate their confidence, if you will, to create something super special. We were already making good wines, but just taking it to the next level, challenging themselves and challenging their consumers and their trade. And we now have these superlative wines that 10 years ago had been thought of as unreachable. So it is by the collective working together to enrich each other, to push each other, to share knowledge, share technology, share time and share equipment that that we've all been able to see that growth in quality, growth in production, and just growth in unity for the region. And it's super exciting that we can say that now, a decade later, that we're family, and we stand united, and we don't stand apart from the rest of our brethren in Paso Robles. We love all the producers and everything that they're doing so well. We're just talking about Cabernet, that Cabernet can stand on its own on the global stage. And I think we've reached that.
How many people or how many brands are working with CAB Collective right now? Like how many?
Yeah, we have 24 brands in the CAB Collective right now. Yeah, and we welcome others. We're not exclusive by any stretch. We're open to anyone who's producing and shares our vision for growth and quality in the region.
Yeah. Doug, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted. I'm sorry too. But when you have a little glass of wine in your hand, you can get away with it. I just wondered if you had any time for any old stories. I would tell you one.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I actually do want to get into something here as we're starting to digress. I'm going to share the Grenache. No reaction. None.
Grenache, did you say?
Yeah.
I love Grenache.
I'm kidding. Having a Cab Franc from Ancient Peaks, so it's still.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to see what your reaction would be if I said Grenache, as we're on a CAB Collective show here.
Well, if you recall our panel, we had to circle them back to Cabernet because they'd get off on a tangent about, oh yeah, Mourvedre and Canat. No, we're talking about Cabernet. Come on back.
Yeah, the future of Canat. We're talking about Cabernet.
Easy to do. Easy to do.
It's
Actually,
fascinating.
yes, I would like to talk a couple little old stories though, Doug. And I know one of them, I mean, okay, so real quick, everyone, setting a stage here. At one point in time, with so much basically grapes leaving Paso over time and going to other AVAs, maybe making it into, you know, a California appellate wine, or who knows, going up to Napa and being the 15% that they don't need to claim.
Mhm.
There was a point in time that we, the Wine Alliance anyway, this is many years ago, created a thing called the Buyers Tour, where we used to actually have growers here go up to Napa to meet wineries to help promote our grapes to sell to them for that 15% or more, who knows, you know.
Yeah.
But that time, Doug, I think you were a part of that, right?
Sure. Yeah. I'm
Stacey,
part of it.
were you doing that too with us?
No, that was when I was one of those buyers. For Paso Robles.
That's
We were
right.
already bugging her. I had her phone number, you know.
Yeah,
it's like,
he totally does.
And so we've come a long way, because we don't do that anymore. Now we're, you know, our buyers tour is totally something different. But when you think back on those times, we were really trying to convince people like, hey, you know, Paso has got some good fruit. That's right about the time also like our, well, at least in '83 is when our Wine Fest started. But in the 2000s or early 2000s, as I recall, there's a story with the two of you being co-chairs of our Wine Fest, right?
Mhm.
yes, we were. Yes. And we did it more than 1 year, but I think we were the millennial 2000 chairs, weren't we, Stace?
We were, and then I was 2001 on my own, but Doug was absolutely there at 5 in the morning setting up and doing all the fun stuff.
We had a tradition there whereby Jim Kolb, I don't know if you remember James Kolb, and I'm not sure either any of the rest of you would remember, but he was one of the first that used to come to check out Paso Robles, and this was way before Google, and he did all his research on great wine growing areas and what it took to make a great wine growing area. And I know Linda talked about Daniel, you know, picking Paso Robles out of anywhere else. Well, there were back in the 80s, late 80s, middle 80s, these guys were coming, they were retired city managers, retired fire chiefs, and they had a 401k that they wanted, and they wanted to be in the wine business. So they were buying 40 acres and planting grapes. And Jim Smoot was their guru to go to. You remember him, don't you, Stacey?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he was just a wonderful guy, Jim, but he was the man to talk to. And I know in my particular instance, when we decided to start planting in 1989, I went to Jim and I said, Jim, what would you plant? I've got this 24 acres I want to plant. He says, well, Doug, I always plant the wrong thing. He says, I'm planting Chardonnay. Maybe you ought to plant Cabernet. And I said, okay, I'll plant Cabernet. So that's the wisdom I put in and the research I put in. I did whatever he suggested, the opposite of what he was planning. And it turned out the French Paradox hit in 1990. And by my first crop, we ended up planting another 200 and I don't know, on down the trail. Of which Stacey, I bothered her a lot to buy a lot of that fruit over the years.
Yes.
But I
I'll
wanted
add
to tell you that
so
Jim Kolb was
Yeah.
started the tradition of we had to meet at the corner right across from where Laurent's is now. At that corner, we each had to pull a cigar out at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning and fire up a cigar for a great wine festival. And by God, then the rest of the day just went on from there.
that's right.
That's
Yeah.
Good.
awesome.
I don't
We
think
still-
we're doing that this year or anymore.
You're not firing up at 5?
No,
Or
there's
the cigar.
changes that are coming up with the Wine Fest, of course. And then
Yeah.
prior to the show, we chatted a little bit about that. But I'm sorry, Stacey, I kind of jumped in on you.
Oh, no. I was just gonna remind Doug about Jim Kolb and his cigars because yeah, cigar and eggs are interesting because we'd break and then say, let's go have breakfast. And you're like, well, I'm not sure I want to have breakfast now, but it was always a really nice start and an honor to some of those guys that, you know, were there from the beginning and were there to really support and volunteer. I mean, it was, you know, in the beginning, it was really grower and winemaker based, the whole wine festival. And the idea was to bring people to Paso Robles. And so, you know, in the beginning, it was mostly locals that would show up because it was kind of like, you know, this fun kind of a picnic in the park, if you will, early on. And as it evolved, you know, you still had volunteers, but the volunteerism was growing and growing. But initially it was quite literally the growers and the vintners in the area at the time. And at that time, there weren't a lot of vintners. And so it was just all of us getting together and saying, hey, we're going to do this thing. Way before marketing or anything else kind of, you know, jumped into the picture. It was just like this wine and grape community getting together to promote Paso and throw this festival. So, I mean, all good times. And, you know, even the transition this year to the Paso Robles Event Center. I mean, for me, it's like, you know, things have to change for different reasons. And I'm actually excited about it because the Paso Event Center is such a great place, such a really good place in our community for events. So I'm excited to see what the wine festival does at the event center because there's just a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think that just speaks to the region and the community that we have of whatever the objective is coming together as a community of vintners and neighbors to do what the next right phase is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Chris, we support you. Just tell us what you need from us.
I will, I definitely will. So what we're talking about now is the fact that the Wine Fest, Paso Wine Fest, as we're calling it now, rather than the Paso Robles Wine Festival, kind of changed the name just a little bit, but it's also just honestly, that's what people call it anyway. And so, you know, for a little while, I think some people are even calling it Mayfest, but it's Stacey.
I still have my old wine festival sweatshirt, so I'll just keep wearing those. I'm good.
But we're moving it over to the fairgrounds. We're going to do a show on it here pretty soon, actually, well ahead. That way, you know, you still have an opportunity to buy tickets and travel here for it and everything else. But yeah, we'll be talking about wine. But Wine Fest, though, it's funny because it is really this kind of tradition in a sense for even the local community to kind of come together, especially the wine community. I think these days, like we just had YVI in town. It's a wine and viticulture trade show and conference where we have guest speaker. It's sponsored by Wine Business Monthly. We have guest speakers who travel in. Actually, Stacey, you were one of the speakers at that opening session. Yes. I saw that session. That was really good, actually. It was pretty inspiring, and this whole topic of family and of our wine region was really great because it is. I'm totally digressing, you guys, and I'm
no, you're progressing. It's good.
Hey, it's your show, Chris. You can do whatever you want.
It's genuine.
But what we were talking about though was kind of the progression of the industry and how the you know brands are working these days, like which ones are successful, and with Hope Family Wines, one of the main the things and ideas that was conveyed is that it has some of the longest tenured employees in all of the brands of Paso. And you know, obviously they're doing something right, but this is what was I mean, I'm sure there are other brands in town that have long tenures of employment and all that, but this is just part of what was talked about at YVI. And Stacey, what you had said about family and how the family welcomes you in to be a part of the family, I think is also a reflection of Paso and how Paso as a wine region actually honestly invites people in, and that, you know, and how we all work together. I mean, our organization and CAB Collective, for instance, and then also just working with other like organizations and all of our wineries. I mean, we just have this simple congeniality that I think resonates for a lot of people. I don't know if you guys can comment on that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, Austin talks all the time about, you know, people share equipment, we share ideas, we're not really closed off. I mean, you know, winemakers feel pretty free to call another winemaker and say, hey, what are you doing? Growers are, you know, constantly having these conversations. It's a good thing. Not all regions do that. You know, sometimes things get really kind of, you know, mine is mine. And as an industry, sometimes over the years, that's what I've noticed is that it's not really, it's a community, but you've got like this sense of competition Whereas in Paso Robles, I think it's kind of like a one mission, whether you're growing Cabernet, Rhônes, whatever, we're all doing it because we have a passion. We have a passion for not only the wines that we're making, but for the region and for also our community. I mean, our community way before grapes was like this. And it's, something that makes us very unique, especially in California, where you've got, we're smack dab in the middle of LA and San Francisco, where, some of that maybe it kind of gets lost these days. But, this strong sense of community that continues, even as people move to the area, they move here because of that. They come here and visit because of that. We're pretty much an open book, and we're willing to share. We're willing to share our ideas, and there's not a lot of true secrets here. We just want to open up and do what we do, and we're willing to share and use each other's knowledge to kind of lift everybody up. I mean, it's truly a thing that I've seen, over my career here in Paso. Is that absolutely everybody's kind of this one team thought, and it's so great to see.
Yeah, I can tell you from years ago when I was out digging trenches to put in a vineyard, and Herman Schwartz came by. He'd stop, so he would give me some advice, and then Hank Ashby would come by and he'd go, I could tell you if you just did this, it would be a little better. I go, thanks so much. I mean, but that's the way it was. It wasn't competitors, they were friends and helping. And it's like that today in the wine. If we have, as you said, an issue in the vineyard or in the winery and somebody has a solution, it's all over. No one feels like they have to hide any of this. It really is a family affair.
Yeah, and I think when our trade, our media come to the region, and our consumers as well, it's palpable, and it comes from the heart, and it shows in everything that we do and how we communicate and how we share this region. And it's really I've always loved the wine industry because of the people and then the wine, but the people are just so good. And the wine is amazing. But at the end of the day, it's what we do as a community that really engages everyone to, I don't want to use the word buy-in, but to really believe in this region and just want to be a part of the community, even if it's only by drinking our wines and learning about our stories, and hopefully coming to the region one day. So for those of you who are watching that aspire to come here, please let us know when you do. We welcome you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We're going to wrap up the show here, but real quick, just a couple of little topics that I had teased earlier. One thing is Paso Wine School. It's basically like CAB Camp. We just have a smaller group. We do 15 to 20 people on that. That's actually coming up in May. And we have invites out. It's a fully paid, we buy your airfare, we get your transportation, you stay here on us, and we kind of give you a little immersion into Paso. You get to meet people like Doug and Stacey and even Linda. To some extent, you will learn about what makes us unique, from soil, from climate, from people, from all that good stuff. So have a look on pasowine.com or follow us on social media, and you'll see how you can apply. We are focused though right now on guests from Arizona and Denver. We have a grant from the California Department of Food and Ag that is having us focus on that. And I think, Linda, you have a similar one that's helping you focus on Texas at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so we're very fortunate that that we're able to get these grants and do these tours and have them help to be sustained through those grants. So I encourage everybody to, if you're in the trade and you're watching this, it's open now until April 22nd, I think is the deadline. So you can also get a hold of me and I can tell you more about that. Reach out to me. My email address is on pasowine.com. Just look at About Us and you'll be able to find me there. Linda, you brought up something really cool about how media is able to kind of pick up on a lot of what we're kind of throwing out there on what makes Paso cool, unique, fun, great place to travel to. But I think what's really great is that they often walk away thinking like, wow, what what a cool area. What a
I
fun.
want to move there.
Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes they really do. Lately, we just had a couple of really great articles, thanks to Travel Paso and the work that they do promoting the area for tourism. Food and Wine did an article on Paso and a bunch of producers. And that one is out there in print and out in circulation, and it's amazing. Check that out. Also, we worked with a journalist that we brought in the fall to get now an article that just appeared yesterday in Thrillist. So if you're online and you're into Thrillist, which has, you know, different publications, if you will, centered on very specific cities. This one is in the national Thrillist archive, if you will.
Nice. Yeah.
And so that's, you know, 50 million eyeballs that are watching that or looking at that particular publication online. But check that out, because that also has a really great wrap up on Paso. One last thing, we are going to do a show on Paso Wine Fest upcoming, but I will tell you right now, we have 2 seminars coming up. A seminar that we're doing because CAB is so incredible for our area and iconic. We're actually calling it the Icons of Pastorables Cabernet Sauvignon. And we will have some really great panelists on that seminar at Paso Wine Fest this year. PasoWine.com to check out what we've got in store. And also go to PasoWine.com to see the next show. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stacey, Linda, Doug.
Pleasure.
You all being on. Cheers. I got one last little sip there.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And
Thank
thanks
you,
everyone
Chris.
for
Thank
joining
you,
us again.
PRWCA.
Oh, right on. Thank you. Thanks, Linda. And for all the
Thank you, Christopher.
working with CAB Collective, Doug, Stacey as well. Just great to have you on. But we'll see you guys next time on the Paso Wine Hour. I don't think we have a show. No, we don't have a show next week because I'm chaperoning a high school field trip.
Oh God, better you than me.
LA. There's going to be 5,000 kids at this conference in LA.
Okay.
You know, myself and a few chaperones I just have 19 of them. So thank goodness.
Well, great
You might
job.
need you might need a bottle of Cabernet after that.
I'll have to wait until I get back, but yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fastest hour in
Awesome.
wine.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Cheers.